Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Inside Elections. Today it is Tuesday, January 6th, 2026, and today we're going to be talking about something not that I normally talk about. Instead of talking about elections, well, we're talking about elections, but instead of talking about news or election predictions, we're going to be talking about the elections themselves. So I am going to be giving you an overview of some of these. It's actually going to be a two-part series. I'm going to do this video now and another video tomorrow. We're going to be discussing today the four battleground states for the Senate. We're going to be talking about the Senate elections and diving into what exactly is happening in these elections. Today we're going to be talking about the elections of Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, and Maine. In tomorrow's video, we're going to be talking about the less talked about Senate elections into 2026 states like Ohio, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota, Texas, and Alaska. But today, that's what we're talking about. And to start off first, we're going to start with Georgia. What exactly, you might hear that Georgia is battleground so much, but what exactly is it? What is happening in Georgia in 2026? We can look. It all starts in 2020. In 2020 was the last time this election map was up. The last time that this election for Georgia's Senate was up. And John Ossoff won by 1.2 points. And before that, we can see Georgia was solidly red. In 2016, red. 2014, red. 2010, solidly red. 2008, red, etc. This was the first time in decades that a Democrat had won Georgia, and that is Democrat John Ossoff. He is running for re-election. He won by 1.2 in 2020, and in 2026, I predict he's going to win by roughly that, if not slightly more. So up against John Ossoff in this Senate election is Michael Whatley. Not Michael Whatley. That's the Carolina. We'll be talking about that in a minute. But it's undecided on the Republican end of the primary. There are multiple Republicans in the race, mainly Buddy Carter, Mike Collins, and Derek Dooley. The thing about all these candidates is that they're nothing special. They've raised a fair amount of money. Buddy Carter's raised the most, but in the actual polls, Mike Collins is leading the Republican primary. And if you don't recognize that name, I don't blame you. I hardly recognize it. And that is Republicans' problem in Georgia. They don't have a stellar candidate after Brian Kemp, the current governor of Georgia, who I guarantee you the current Republican governor of Georgia, if he ran for the Senate race, I guarantee you he would win it. He would unseat John Ossoff. But he's not running. And it looks like Mike Collins is going to be the Republican primary, is going to win the Republican primary. But he is weak. Nobody knows who he is. He's raised $2.5 million. That's a lot of money. But we can look at John Ossoff, the current senator. Where is his fundraising? It's not here. Here it is, sorry. Well, Mike Collins has raised $2.5 million. John Ossoff has raised $54 million. That's the Republicans' problem in the state. They don't have a good candidate, and the candidates they do are unenthusiastic. People don't care for them. They're not donating to them as much as they are the Democrats. John Ossoff in this election is most likely going to win it. And the polling shows that. And the RCP aggregate of this election has John Ossoff winning by about 3.6. And individual polls have him leading by even more. They don't have, against Mike Collins, they have him leading by 2 in RCP. But against other candidates like Buddy Carter, he's winning by 3, by 4, by 7, by 4, by 8, by 13. It looks like he's going to win this race. And that is basically the baseline for Georgia. 2 candidates, a popular incumbent Democratic senator versus an unknown Michael Whatley. And that brings us to the next Senate election I want to talk about, North Carolina. What's interesting about North Carolina is, you probably know, it's a red state. The last Senate election was in 2022. Red. 2020, red. 2016, red. 2014, red. 2010, red. 2008 was the last time it was blue. What's interesting about this race, sort of similar to Georgia, there's not an incumbent Democratic senator, but there is a retiring incumbent Republican senator, which means that it's open for the Republican primary. And what Republicans have a problem with is who it is. Michael Whatley, the current RNC chair for North Carolina. Nobody knows who he is. Everybody in the state of North Carolina knows who Roy Cooper is. The Democratic primary nominee, the presumptive nominee for North Carolina Senate on the Democratic side. Everybody in North Carolina knows who Roy Cooper is. He's been the Attorney General for decades. He's been the governor for decades. He's been in North Carolina politics for decades. Statewide North Carolina politics and has never lost an election. And he's facing up against most likely Michael Whatley. And he's, once again, we can look at the fundraising numbers. Michael Whatley has raised $1.4 million. That's a lot of money. But look at Roy Cooper. He's raised $11 million. Aggregates have the race as a toss-up. Some tilt D. Individual polls, this poll has him up by 10 points. The aggregate of RCP and Race to the White House has him up by 5-6 points. And more individual polls have him up by, again, 8 points, 4 points, 7 points, 8 points, 6 points, 3 points. The point is that he is leading in this race. The candidates involved are Roy Cooper and most likely Michael Whatley. Michael Whatley has Donald Trump's endorsement, which means he's going to cruise through the primary just to lose by 5 points in a solidly red swing state. Not solid red, but you know what I mean. It votes red the vast majority of the time, except when it comes to Roy Cooper, which is why Republicans should be scared of this. Democrats should be happy. Look, going into 2026 in North Carolina, it is close to a guaranteed flip it to the Democratic Party. Yeah, actually, I'm going to put this here. Georgia, I think it's going to go to the Democrats. North Carolina, also going to go to the Democrats. And now I want to talk about Michigan. Michigan is the swing state but the swing Senate election that I'm actually least knowledgeable in. The current candidates on the Democratic side, it's a bloodbath of a primary. I'm not going to lie. There's a 3-way Democratic primary. Haley Stevens is a moderate, corporate, boring, unenthusiastic Democrat. She's facing up against 2 progressive left Democrats. Mallory McMorrow. She's left. She's progressive left, but not as left as Abdul El Sayed. And it's a very tightly contested primary because these are 3 completely different types of Democrats in the race. And whoever is nominated is going to completely determine the outcome of the Senate race. Because on the Republican end, Mike Rogers is the Republican nominee, presumptive nominee, and he's relatively popular. Yes, in 2024 he lost to Alyssa Slotkin when Donald Trump was winning the state of Michigan by over a point. He is still relatively popular in Michigan. He's not this stellar candidate by no means, but he's no Mark Robinson. He's no Buddy Carter. He's unpopular, but not unpopular. He's relatively, I don't know how to say this. That's the point of this video, to talk about this election, because I don't know everything about it. I don't think you know everything about it. Look at the individual polling. Like I said, with this multi-way primary, this race it's just completely depends who the Democrats nominate. Again, with Haley Stevens, the moderate Democrat, she wins in the polls by more often. Recent polls, it's back and forth. Mike Rogers up by 2, Haley Stevens up by 2. Mike Rogers up by 7, Haley Stevens up by 2, Haley Stevens up by 1, Haley Stevens up by 5, 4. I mean, Mike Rogers up by 6. It's a toss up in my opinion, complete toss up. But with Abdul El Sayed, the farthest left candidate, Mike Rogers leads by more in every single poll, but the undecideds are way higher. 20% undecideds versus low, like 11, 8, 13% undecideds. Similar with Mallory McMorrow, but she's not as left. She's still further left than Haley Stevens, but not as left as Abdul El Sayed. So in these 5 polls, she wins 2 of them and loses 3 of them. No, 2 of them and loses 4 of them. Sorry. But once again, with this relatively high undecided number, undecided's 14, 15, 15. One undecided's at 8, but you get the point. And we can look at individual fundraising for each of these candidates. Abdul El Sayed, Mallory McMorrow, and Haley Stevens all have relatively similar amounts of fundraising. Haley Stevens has raised almost 5 million, Mallory McMorrow almost 4 million, and El Sayed 3.5 million, which kind of goes in order of how well each candidate does. Haley Stevens is doing best in polls, followed by Mallory McMorrow, followed by El Sayed. And let's talk more about Mike Rogers on the Republican side. We're just going to talk about Mike Rogers. These other 2 candidates are nothing, really. They're not going to beat Mike Rogers in the Republican primary. I've already kind of said, we can look at the predictions. Unlike in North Carolina and Georgia, where some of these predicted sites had them as most toss-up, but some lean, some tilt towards each party, this is a complete toss-up. Michigan, not everybody, but I see widely that people see Michigan as one of the lesser swing states going into 2026. I think it's the opposite. I think it's the most swing state into 2026. It's because of the candidates on the Democratic side. These Democrats are having to battle it out in a close primary, spending millions of dollars against each other instead of spending millions of dollars against the Republican nominee, Mike Rogers, who is, once again, relatively popular. And the Democrats are relatively unpopular. They're split. It's either moderate left versus far left. Okay, that's enough about Michigan. You sort of get the point. I hope you get the point. This video's been on for way too long, so we're just gonna wrap it up with Maine. In Maine, it's interesting. This is a blue state. So you might say, blue state? Why is the Senate election a toss-up? It's because of Susan Collins. Susan Collins is the incumbent senator in Maine, and she has been for 5 terms. She's been in Congress for 3 decades in the seat of Maine. She's a Republican. She's a very moderate Republican. She votes with the Democrats more often than not. Well, actually, maybe not more often than not, but she votes with the Democrats a lot. I would say she's a popular Republican, but I do not believe she's not that popular for a Republican. Look at the cash on hand. She's raised $8 million. And that's because she's the only person Republican who can win in Maine, and I say that wholeheartedly. When on the Democratic side, just look, there are so many and so few candidates. So many people are running for the Maine governor's race, instead of the Senate race. The 2 leading candidates on the Democratic side are Graham Plattner and Janet Mills. I don't know why Janet Mills isn't here. Janet Mills is the current governor of Maine. She is running for the Senate in 2026 as a Democrat. However, I don't mean to say this rudely, but Janet Mills, you can see here, she is old. Graham Plattner is the new guard of the Democratic Party. Janet Mills is the old guard of the Democratic Party. I believe she's like 78, 79, around that. She would be into her mid-80s, into her 80s in this Senate race. But Graham Plattner is sort of, like I said, the new guard. He's young, he's progressive left, However, he has had scandals come out about him. Some pretty bad scandals, not awful, but scandals nonetheless. Which, personally, I have no clue who's going to win this race. Again, Susan Collins versus Graham Plattner versus Janet Mills. They are both of the Democrats have their flaws, and Susan Collins is. I mean, she's Susan Collins. She's been in the Senate for 30 years. That's Michigan. She's been in the Senate for 30 years. We can go all the way back. 2020, she won by 9. 2008, she won by 30. 2002, she won by 20. 1996, I mean, 2002, she won by 20. 1996, she won by about 5. She's been in this Senate seat for decades on end, and she's running again. We said in 2020 that this was going to be the time that Democrats unseat her, but now we're saying the same thing in 2026. We don't know. I do not know what's going to happen in this race, but the candidates are Susan Collins versus Graham Plattner or Janet Mills. Whoever wins the primary, I have no clue who's going to win the primary. I think it'll probably be Janet Mills just because of her name recognition and the scandals against Graham Plattner, but I could be completely wrong. I've seen the betting markets say that Graham Plattner is ahead. Some of these polls are saying Graham Plattner is ahead, up by 7.5, but they also say Janet Mills is up by 4. I don't know. That's enough of my yapping. I've been yapping for way too long. That is a little. I hope that gives you a little bit of insight onto these elections. Just a little bit of an overview on Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, and Maine. I'm gonna make another one of these videos tomorrow about these elections in Minnesota, Iowa, Ohio, Nebraska, Texas, and Alaska. I hope you watch those. If you made it this far, I encourage you to like the video, subscribe it, comment any suggestions that you would like me to make a video on. It can be about news of elections, it can be about election predictions, it can be about just talking about elections, anything. Just let me know in the comments. And yeah, I hope you have a great day.